new people. I don't know last names right now. I'm not going to ask you because we're on film right now, and I'll get them later. But honestly, I say things, I talked to my dad one time, who unfortunately is not a believer, and he goes, you just spoke 3 sentences. I don't understand a word you said. We throw words around that sometimes I think not everybody understands what we mean, and we know perfectly well what we mean. So if you have any questions, either write them down, or if you feel a burning need, interrupt me or something and ask. But I say Yeshua instead of Jesus because I believe his name was Yeshua or Yahshua or something like that. And I say other words too. If you don't know, ask. I'm not offended. All right, our call to worship today, we're actually going to have one, is Psalm 41. So go ahead and turn there, please. Psalm 41, a psalm of David, or as his name was probably pronounced, Dawid. Blessed is he that considers the poor. Yahweh, wherever it says the Lord in all caps in the King James Version, that's the Hebrew Yud-He, Vav-He, in English kind of Y-H-W-H. It's either Yahweh or Yahweh or Yahuwah or something, but it's not the Lord. And so it is a name too, not a title kind of thing. So Yahweh will deliver him in the time of trouble. Blessed is he that considers the poor. Yahweh will deliver him in the time of trouble. Poor here does not mean monetarily poor. It means weak and feeble. The downtrodden people of the world. Now, they could also be financially challenged, but blessed is he that considers these people, because Yahweh will deliver him in the time of trouble. Yahweh will preserve him and keep him alive. He shall be blessed upon the earth, and thou wilt not deliver him unto the will of his enemies. And so right there, that's showing us that we need to take care of those people and not turn them over to their enemies. Yahweh will strengthen him upon the bed of languishing. Thou wilt make all his bed in his sickness. I said, Yahweh, be merciful unto me. Heal my soul, for I have sinned against thee. My enemies speak evil of me. When shall he die and his name perish? That's what the enemies are saying. And if he come to see me, he speaketh vanity. His heart gathers iniquity to itself. When he goes abroad, he tells it. All that hate me whisper together against me. Against me they do devise my hurt. An evil disease, say they, cleaves fast unto him. And actually, evil disease is also better translated, a thing of Belial. So it's basically like a curse. An evil disease, say thee, cleaveth fast unto him. And now that he lieth, he shall rise up no more. Man, I could do a whole sermon on this. Yea, mine own familiar friend, in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread, has lifted up his heel against me. But thou, O Yahweh, be merciful unto me, and raise me up, that I may requite them. But this I know, that thou favors me, because my enemy does not triumph over me. And as for me, thou upholdest me in mine integrity, and settest me before thy face forever. Blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Amen and amen. I think today's sermon, if I had to give it a title, and we kind of do half the time, would be Tribe, Betrayal, and Love. It's kind of catchy, right? I was actually thinking you could do a book on this. Tribe. I may do a book on tribes. I've been thinking a lot about it. I'm reading some stuff on it that others have written. And I've been thinking about tribes and the state of man and how things are in the world right now. The world is a mess. I mean, it really is. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, I bet people in the 50s, I bet you there were preachers in the 50s who stood up and said, the world is a mess. Look at what's happening with youth today, right? And that kind of thing. But it's no secret that I surf Drudge Report, and then I go to different other news sites and look at things. And there's just these really weird articles that keep coming up, like AI, artificial intelligence. Okay, big deal. But how many people here have heard of the Internet of Things? It's a fascinating concept. You guys should Google the Internet of Things. Right now, the Internet is this big, and they're projecting, and I'm speaking almost out of school here. Some of those hands probably know more about it, but they're projecting very rapidly in the near future, there's going to be this whole other Internet called the Internet of Things that's going to be bigger as far as more bytes and power and things going on. And that's where, I'm just totally making this up off the cuff, your carburetor in your car talks to your home security system, which talks to this, which orders a part, which gets this thing done. And it's all happening artificially intelligence and set up without really human input. That's going to be bigger than the internet today that's running. And it's going to happen very quickly. And so artificial intelligence, there's some smart minds out there who are warning against it. And we've all seen the movies about it. You know, they decided our fate in a microsecond. But there's like, hey, things are happening. I just saw a woman that I watch on YouTube, and she did a video. She's a homesteader, and all her videos are demonetized. And she's really apolitical. Matter of fact, she's probably kind of leftward leaning, I would think. And she said the reason they're being demonetized for her, she checked, is because Google is using an artificial intelligence now to demonetize videos, and she just got caught up in it. But there's all this technology, and you know, I'm not a Luddite, technology can help us. Like, technology, as it exists today, allows for an interconnection of people, right? And so we're talking tribes, and I'm going to get more into that, but it allows people to connect. Flash mobs happen because people have cell phones and text and all that, and they can just send all this stuff out, and they can get together. I don't want my phone making noise, speaking of which. And it bothers you like that. Internet. The internet. How many people here found me on the internet? Almost everybody except Jason and Abby. And you, well, you found me through Fletch, who found me on the internet. Martin. So that's a good thing if you think about it like that. We were allowed to come together and to gather because of technology. And so in that way, technology allows connection, but it also fosters isolation. You know, the front porch is basically gone. And the front porch used to be a place where you would meet your neighbors and you would hang out and you would talk, and it wasn't as intimate as bringing them into your home, and so you didn't have to have it all picked up and everything and, you know, see clothes laying around or whatever. You could just be on the front porch and talk, and our front porch is gone. Kate and I were, and I think I've talked about this here before, driving around this summer. You don't see any kids out in the street playing like we used to, and that's because they're all inside on their technology, whether it's games or videos or they're talking to friends on Facebook and stuff like that. And so really, we're being isolated. Humans were created by Yah to be together. It is not right that man should be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him, a meet for him. Make him help me. It's not good for man to be alone. And so Yah created us from the very beginning to have connection with people. And I submit to you today that that connection is being broken. And we're not seeing it, and it's because of technology. And we think we have friends because people retweet our tweets or they follow us on Facebook or whatever, but they're not going to come help you burn brush and chop down weeds and briars and haul dead logs out of the way and stuff. They're not real friends. They're not somebody you can call when your car breaks down at 10 o'clock at night halfway between here and Siloam and say, can you help me? Or a log falls across your road and it's like, hey man, I'm stuck at Shofar Mountain, can you come help? And he's like, yeah, I'll bring a chain and a truck and a chainsaw and we'll get you squared away. Those are friends. But you don't get that on the internet today, although we called you via text, via technology. So I think it's worthy of some thought on our part. It's not what today's sermon's about, but where does technology help us and where does technology hurt us as a people and as Yah created us to be? Because I think the time is coming when we're going to have to make some choices. And I am starting to emotionally prepare myself to take all my technological stuff and throw it in a river. That time is not coming up next week, but I can see that time coming. That'll probably be another sermon for another time. Not only are we created to be social people, I think we were created to be tribal people. To gather together in units bigger than our family. And the way tribes typically, whether it's in Africa or Asia or old Europe or whatever, work, the first unit is the family. It's the father, the wife, the wives sometimes, the kids. Boom. That's the first unit. The second unit is the clan, and it's called by other names, but I'm using like Scottish Highlander terms. And so it's all these families that are kind of related by some sort of kinship, which the Fletchalls have that going on right now. You've got the Fletchall clan working on your property right now, and the Foxes have it just a wee little bit with Janelle, but not really. But the Kims, you may be starting to build like a clan kind of thing going on as more family members come, and Tristan's like, oh great, just what I need. But those are clans, and then the clans come together to form a tribe, right? And so that's kind of the way that it works. Israel was tribal, right? Israel was tribal. And even when they went into captivity in Egypt, I'm thinking they had to have maintained their tribal distinction, their tribal identity, because as soon as they come out of Egypt, Moses organizes them for the march. He organizes them for when they stop at night to camp and stuff. This tribe is here, this tribe is here, this tribe is here. And people weren't like, excuse me, what tribe are the Foxes in? Everybody knew. And so it's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. And then duties were assigned to tribes and things like that. Israel splits, north-south, right? The civil war, if you will. And then the north goes into captivity by the Assyrians, which is Iraq, never heard from again. And then the south gets captured later. They go into Babylon. They come back out of Babylon. We're getting to the time of Jesus. They rebuild in Jerusalem. Are they tribal at that point? Ooh. See, I've been looking at this. Once they come back out of Babylon and they're living there, they know what tribes they're from. Like, clearly Yeshua, he knows that he's from Judah and those kinds of things. But they're not really living that way. Their system, their society has changed, and you basically have the elites, which is the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? The priests, if you will, up there. They're kind of one chunk, and then you have this whole other chunk of people, and you don't get a sense from the reading that we do in New Testament times that there was a whole lot of tribal distinctions at that point. But people are created to think and act tribally. And so what happened? We talked about this either last week or the week before. Little tribes formed. Different tribes. Remember how I said Yeshua, master, the word master is more like the Eastern master of martial arts kind of thing, and he has all his students and disciples with him, and he's walking around. Well, Yeshua wasn't the only one. There were all kinds of these guys walking around, in Asia they call them gurus, and Central Asia and stuff like that had all their disciples, their schools as they call it in some places, and people followed them around, and when you followed a certain master, you started speaking the words that master speaks, you started acting like that master taught, you started wearing things that set you apart. These are all tribal things. And so you could look at them and go, oh, those are followers of this guy. Those are followers of Yeshua. Those are Jesus freaks, right? Something like that. You can tell by the way they look. And so tribes were still actually happening, and I think it's because we just feel this deep need to be a part of tribes. And so bring it up to today. How are tribes today? Sports teams, people walk around and they're like, yes, go Chiefs. You're like, no, not me. Oh. But, people wear the jerseys. Now the NFL is losing, not so much, but people were feeling that. Why were perfectly, otherwise mature grown men wearing jerseys with some other dude's number on it and getting all excited about games? Yeah, we beat you, man. And people are yelling. It's like, dude, it's the need to be part of a tribe. It's this innate thing. High schools. High school's a little tribe, right? High schools wear their jackets and their colors and they go to games and it's like, we're going to beat that team and we hate that team and we like this team and it's all tribal. Churches. Churches today, bigger churches are kind of like tribes. Right? We think alike, we talk alike, we hang out together, we use the same vocabulary. Sometimes they all have their cool t-shirt. If you go to some churches, they're what I call suit churches. The men's wear suits. Some churches are sport coat churches. Some are what they call casual, and some are like us, which is like really casual. Right? Churches. But that's a uniform, and the tribe kind of identifies with that. I know that people look at Sister Kate, Sister Donna, when they're walking around and thinking, what tribe are they in? Sister Susie, whatever. I mean, it's just something that sticks out. And then I could be wrong on this, but definitely in the 50s through the 70s, organizations like the Masons, the Elks, the Knights of Columbus, those little like lodge type things, those are basically just tribes, right? Where people get together and they feel this longing, and they're not so big anymore. And you know why I think they're not as big anymore? Going all the way back to technology. People are connecting via different means with different people, and I submit to you, they're not really connecting. So, that brings me to Shofar Mountain. I think we're kind of like a little tribe. Everybody on Shofar Mountain, in Shofar Mountain, I'm talking the assembly, is from somewhere else. We don't have a native, don't know enough about you two yet. We don't have a native Ozarkian yet here, right? Everybody came from somewhere else. Illinois, Kansas, Colorado, don't know. New York by West Virginia, Montana, it's like we all come, Colorado, we all come from somewhere else, and yet we're all here together. When I was led to start Shofar Mountain, came up with about a 5-point vision statement for Shofar Mountain, because it still applies to us today, but I think it's morphed. And the first one was a united community. What's united mean? Seeking a deeper and more obedient relationship with Yahweh. I think that's working for us. Who has left worldly lusts behind. That's part of it, which I think we all need work on. Going back to the technology thing. Living a simple, and we said self-sufficient in the beginning, a simple and self-sufficient life, and now we say simple agriculturally based life that treats creation with respect. So then I got to thinking, okay, well, that's not really happening in the main, but there's still big chunks of that affects us. So what is the Shofar Mountain culture? I just found myself talking to somebody recently about the different Messianic, Torah-observant Hebrew roots groups, and on the spectrum, you can kind of put them, and I say, we kind of chuckle when we say it, Shofar Mountain's kind of down here at this end of the thing. Well, everybody probably thinks they're at an end. But what makes us Shofarians? What unites us as Shofarians? Obviously, we love the Father and we love Yeshua, and we worship the Father through Yeshua, through Jesus. Well, so does everybody else. So that's not really it, right? We try to keep Torah. Okay, well, again, that puts us right in there with all the other, pick a name, people. We live in the Ozarks. We felt called to come to the Ozarks. That is definitely something. That doesn't then set us apart from all the other groups in the Ozarks, but it is something that's starting to get to it. So what is it that makes us Shofarians? Because Sister Kate and I, the Kims, to a degree, live off-grid, but some people don't. So that's not a thing. That's not a thing. Some of us are raising critters and vegetables. Some of us really aren't. So that's not a thing. And so I've been trying to kind of think, what makes us us? We're firearms friendly, right? I know that. That kind of freaks some people out. I think as a group, we're generally into preparedness, right? We kind of have a vision of what could possibly happen, and we feel the need to get ready for that. And I think that sets us apart from some people. And I don't have an answer for this. I'm not like going to define Shofar Mountain here, but it's just something that I've been thinking about with community and tribes and things like that. And then I wrote down here, well, we're all Americans. And then I got to thinking, I realize this is a stream of consciousness, but believe it or not, it's all going to tie together when we go to John today. How close are Americans? Now think of a stereotypical American. What defines an American? And boy, I can do that. I can pick Americans out in airports overseas easy. We're easy to pick out. How close are Americans to Yah's ideal of people, of community, of things that you value? Because Yah had in his mind when he created Adam and then Chava or Eve, he had in his mind how he wanted humanity to be. And then there's Israel. Was Israel perfect? Far from perfect, right? But they were trying, and so there's this thing going on there. Come up to today because we are all stamped with Americanism on us. And this is not going to be an anti-American communist tirade here, but how close are Americans to Yah's ideal? So then I started thinking, all right, what makes us Americans? Americans are capitalistic, right? We're all about making money, doing better, and we understand our terminology, which, if you want to go big tribe, our terminology is very capitalistic. We talk about spending time. I spent time there. Right? Everything's spending with us, and it's like a cost-benefit analysis of how we look at things. Is it worth my time? I've told stories before when I was going around Prairie Church as one of y'all, as just a person in a pew, I'd say, I'm not being fed here. It's when I wasn't the pastor. Not really being fed as the pastor, but it's like, all right, it's not worth my time. See the capitalistic words that come in there? I'm expending time, I'm not getting back my worth. That's an American way of thinking about things. That's not necessarily an Asian way, an African way, a South American way of thinking about how you spend time. Other people could look at time like it's just a big consensus and community and I love being together. How did the Israelites look at time? Did the Israelites go, oh God, here goes Moshe again. He doesn't even speak well, and we got to sit here and listen to him. I'm not so sure they did. I think they might have thought, hey, this is pretty cool. I get to now talk to the Fletchalls while we're hanging out here. But we're very capitalistic. We compete. We chase money. We value things in money. We talk about money a lot, and I'm wondering how close that is to the Father. We're also very independent. Americans pride ourselves on our independence. I don't need anybody. I can conquer this country on my own. I don't need anybody to come help me. I mean, you're doing the Israelite thing and you're doing the community thing, but a lot of the men here have done work that we could have easily said, hey, will you come help me do this? Oh man, I don't want to bother him. I want to show that I can do it myself, right? I'm independent. I can conquer America and go from coast to coast in it. And I'm not so sure that these things are what the Father intended for humanity. And so these are things for y'all to think about. Please turn to Jeremiah chapter 6. I told you about technology. I'm not sure it's working the way it should. I'm not sure it's so good. I'm not sure that the American ideals are necessarily Yah's ideals. The things that we hold dear as Americans, I'm not so sure that those are necessarily the things that Yah values for us. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16. Thus saith Yahweh, stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. Also I set watchmen over you, saying, hearken to the sound of the shofar. But they said, we will not hearken. Stand in the ways, consider the old ways. This is Jeremiah. Jeremiah wrote this. He's saying, consider the old ways. Does anybody have any idea when Jeremiah wrote this? 500 BC, roughly. 500 years before Christ is when Jeremiah wrote this, and we're reading, consider the old ways. That's a long time ago that he's talking about. I wonder sometimes, I hear when it comes to, you all did. Come out of her, my people, right? Get away from those cities. Forget all that glittery, shiny stuff. This is not that sermon today. Come out of her, my people. And the amount of people who say, oh, I really wish I could do that, but I just can't. Why not? Consider the old ways. How did people do it in the olden days? How did people do it in the 1800s? You all have an awesome solar system. I know you showed me pictures of it. I've talked to people before about solar, and they're like, well, how much solar do you need? And the one way of looking at it is I want to run all these things on solar, so I need this much solar, and this is my system. That's kind of a capitalistic American way of looking at it, and a modern way. The way Sister Kate and I did it was like, okay, we can afford this $200 solar system. What can we run on it? Right? What do you need? What did the people in this country in the 1800s have? People talk about, and I'm one of them, talks about a potential EMP or coronal mass ejection coming, and it's like, oh, how are we going to do? What are we going to protect? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? The people in the 1800s didn't have any electricity, and they did just fine. We're all here because of it. Consider the old ways. Let's look at Jeremiah 18. Just skip forward a little bit. Jeremiah 18, verse 15. Because my people have forgotten me, they have burned incense to vanity. That means they're worshiping false gods, by the way. And they have caused them to stumble in their ways from the ancient paths, to walk in the paths in the way not cast up. The cast up is, and I don't know, y'all might have a different translation of that, but basically it's a narrow way. They pile up rocks and they make it narrow so you don't have to walk through the mud and the muck and the mire. And it harkens to straight is the way, narrow is the gate that leads, to salvation, to everlasting life. And so they don't walk in that way. To make their land desolate and perpetual hissing, everyone that passes thereby shall be astonished and wag his head. I will scatter them as with an east wind before the enemy. I will show them the back and not the face in the day of their calamity. They're scattered. They're not following the ancient paths, and they're not going to see the face of Yah in the day of calamity because they're focused on the wrong things. They're not focused on the ancient things, the simple things. Let's go to John chapter 13. That was all preamble, but I think you're going to see how it goes together. John chapter 13. All right, you'll remember last week we covered Yeshua is sitting down with his apostles, and he did what? What did he do to them? He washed their feet, right? And so we covered that all. And in 14, verse 14, just kind of as a recap, if I then, your Lord and Master, this is Yeshua speaking, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent is greater than he that sent him. If you know these things, happy are ye if you do them. You're blessed if you know and do these things. That's how Yeshua finished up. Let's continue, because we're going to come back and refer to some of that. Yeshua is still speaking, and he says, I speak. Now, he just told them all, hey, do these things. Key point here, I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. And then in verse 18 he says, but, he doesn't say but, I added that, I speak not of you all. I know whom I have chosen, but that the scripture be fulfilled, he that eateth bread with me hath lifted up his heel against me. That's what we just read in Psalm 41 in our call to worship. He that eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Now I tell you before it come, that when it comes to pass, you may believe that I am he. He that has eaten bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. To sit down and break bread together, to eat together, there is something special about that. There's something beyond just, oh, it's nice and we all got together and we ate. The sharing of food, the sharing of a meal is, again, something that we're not really doing so much in modern times as we used to do in the past. We read in the Torah portion last week where Abraham is sitting in the door of his tent on the plains of Mamre, right? And then all of a sudden these three figures, like angels, right, appear. And what's the first thing he does? Hey, let me get some water so y'all can wash your feet, and quick, let's make some food for you, right? And so they make food for him. And then and so they're sharing a meal with these complete strangers. And then we went forward a little bit to Lot, and the two angels show up in, was Lot in Sodom or Gomorrah? Sodom, right? Lot's in Sodom. Sodom and Gomorrah, they're like twin cities. Anyway, he's like, hey, let me make you guys some food. Quick, make some bread with the finest meal. Let's kill this calf. Let's make our guest food. And so they're sharing food together. Even with Isaac, with Jacob and Esau, and Isaac tells Esau, hey, go make me some of that savory food. I love that venison you cook. That's so good. And mom says, hey, Jacob, man, you need to go do this, and that whole thing goes on. But that's all around sharing a meal together. Right? And so meals are important. Breaking bread is important. And so when we read here, he's not just quoting Psalm 41 when Yeshua says, he that eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. It's someone who I have trusted, someone who I have sat down across a table with, someone who we have shared a meal together. There's a bond there, and he's betraying me. He's lifting up his heel against me. He says this while they're sitting down eating a meal together, and he's talking about one of them. This is the inner cadre, the core, the leadership of the tribe that is following Yeshua at this time. Of all, when he'd gather and all the disciples would be there, and he'd talk to all those people and the loaves and the fishes and all that. Loaves and the fishes. It's feeding people again, right? And it's like, hey man, we broke bread together, and somebody is turning against me. I said last week, betrayal always comes from within. Verily, verily, I say unto you. Oh, and then he says, I'm telling you this now. I'm telling you that one of y'all is going to betray me. This is kind of an interesting point to me. So that when it comes to pass, you all believe that I am he. Who's he? You will believe it. Let me get the right words. You will believe that I am he. I am the Messiah. I am the anointed of Yah, right? I am the chosen one of Yah. So that you will believe that when it comes to pass. These are the 12 guys that are the closest to Yeshua, and he's saying, I'm telling you this now so that you actually do believe that I'm him. Can you feel the frustration of Yeshua? They don't believe necessarily, all of them, that he actually is Messiah. The guys that have been hanging out with him, and he's fixing to die in 24 hours. He says, but I'm going to tell you this now so that you believe that I am he. So when you think you're getting frustrated, just look back at Yeshua and look what he had to deal with. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that receives whomever I send receives me. And he that receives me receives him that sent me. Who's he talking to there? Who's Yeshua talking to? Verily, verily, I say unto you. He's talking to the 12 apostles that are sitting there. Actually, he's talking to 11 of them, right? He's talking to the 11 of the 12 apostles that are there, and he's like, hey, check it out. Anybody who receives you receives me. Anybody that receives me receives him, Yahweh, that sent me. He's telling him this because he knows he's going to die here directly, and he knows these 11 guys are going to be the 11 guys that are left to carry on. And he's saying, look, these are very subtle marching orders. You're going to have to go out and get received. Because if they receive you, they're receiving me. Meaning you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to go have to preach the word. You're going to go have to tell them about me and what I did for y'all. And if anybody receives you, they're receiving me. And check it. If they receive me, they're receiving the Father. Well, okay, so that was 11 guys 2,000-something years ago. What about today? Jeremiah 3:15. I will send you pastors after my own heart, who will feed you with knowledge and with understanding. Yah sends pastors. Yah sends people. He anoints people to spread his word. I believe I'm anointed by Yah. So therefore, if he's sending me to do this, everyone who receives me, it gives me kind of a big head on my shoulders, but then there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, is receiving him. And everybody who receives him is receiving the Father. And then what happens if I mess that up? If I don't do my due diligence and do that correctly? Well, then we can read, I get in a lot of trouble for that, more so than regular people, if you will, that aren't sent. But Yeshua is explaining that to the people. Anybody who receives you receives me. 21. When Yeshua, Jesus, had thus said, he was troubled in the spirit. And he testified and said, verily, verily, which is the same as amen as amen. It's the same as let it be so. And what it really means when Yeshua says verily, verily is listen up to what I'm about to say. I say unto you that one of you shall betray me. Look at those two verses in context. He starts out, verily, verily, I say unto you, he that receives whomever I send, that's y'all. They know he's talking about them. Anybody who receives you receives me, receives the Father. Next sentence out of his mouth, he says, verily, verily, I say unto you, one of y'all is going to betray me. Go forth. Anybody who receives you is ultimately receiving the Father. Oh, except one of y'all is going to betray me. So here's this great honor that's getting bestowed upon you, but one of y'all is not right. So a plus and a minus. Then the disciples looked one on another, doubting of whom he spoke. They're like, wait a minute, one of us? One of us? We're your posse. We're the guys that are with you. We've got your back. Matter of fact, Peter later, we'll probably get to that next week, says, oh, not me, Father. You know, I'm not me, Yeshua, Master, I'm with you. No. Now, there was one leaning on, now this says in King James, leaning on Yeshua's bosom, one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved. I'm going to read it and come back. Simon Peter therefore beckoned to him, that he should ask who it should be of whom he spake. He then, lying on Yeshua's breast, said unto him, Lord, who is it? And Yeshua answers. Okay, here's what's going on. We talked about washing feet, nasty feet. They were basically reclining, laid back on cushions around a very low table. Has anybody here ever been to a formal meal where you get all dressed up and there's like the head table and the lesser tables and there's little cards where you sit and all that stuff? Man, there's a lot that goes into that. Who sits at the head table? Who sits to the left? Who sits to the right? Who sits at the next table in front of the head table? And who sits all the way back in that corner back there of that table over there? And there's people who, that whole job is protocol, and they figure out who's going to do what. Well, it comes from these times like this. The head of the table was Yeshua, right? He's the master and everybody's the disciples. On his right hand, this side, that's the seat of honor. And so then there's descending honor all the way around the table. Now, I'm not sure that means the left hand is the least honor. I don't think it probably is. I do know the right hand is the most honor, and the left hand is something else. But people are sitting around, so we're laying around this table. We're all eating grapes and naan bread and stuff like that and talking. And so picture 12 people. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's like us right there. Picture us on a table. We'd make a pretty big space. And so there's lots of little conversations going on. And it says the one whom Jesus loved is on his bosom. It just means he's laying next to Jesus, right? Next to Yeshua. And that's John, the guy who wrote this. So he's sitting in the position of honor here on the right hand of Yeshua. And he's talking, and next to him is Simon Peter. So Simon Peter's like, hey man, who's he talking to? Who's he talking about? It's not me, is it you? Ask him who he's talking about. That conversation wasn't heard by everybody at the table, because there's a lot of little conversations going on at the table. And so he just asked him, and so then John leans over to Yeshua, and he asks Yeshua. And again, not everybody hears. It's not like we're at a point of order. I have a point of discussion for the table. And so this is just a little conversation going on with Yeshua. And so then Yeshua answers in verse 26. And he goes, Lord, who is it? And Yeshua answers, says, he it is whom I shall give. Now it says in King James, a sop, when I have dipped it. And when he dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. Does somebody have something different than sop in their Bible? Bread. Hey, it's just like you've got this gravy, this naan, this curry kind of mixed Middle Eastern food, and you break off your bread and you dip it up. It's like when you eat huevos rancheros and you dip up the yolk with your tortilla, right? And so that's a sop, right? You just eat some juice in there and you eat it. Well, it was considered a point of honor, like a cool thing, if the host were to dip some bread into a dish and hand it to you. That's like, oh, he's feeding me. It goes back to that whole thing of breaking bread together. And now he is actually giving me food. And culturally, that's what it was. And so Yeshua says, check it out. The one who's going to betray me is the one who I'm going to give this piece of bread to, that I've dipped. And so when he does it, he gives it to Judas. Here's what else is going on. Look back at verse 21. When Jesus had just said that, he was troubled in his spirit, and he testified and said, now he's saying this to everybody, "Verily, verily, I say unto you that one of you shall betray me." Does Judas know he's talking about him? He does. Because it says back here, verse 2, supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. And so Judas has already decided to betray Yeshua, and then here a couple verses later, Yeshua is saying, hey, one of y'all is going to betray me. What he's doing there is kind of giving Judas an opt-out. He's appealing to his conscience. He's just talking about how wonderful y'all are and how you're going to represent me, and whoever represents me is representing the Father, and oh, by the way, one of you is going to betray me. That was like a ding, so Judas maybe would go, and repent, right? Like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. Well, skip down here to where he hands him the sop. He's giving him the honored piece of food, if you will, out of the master's hands. The appeal to the conscience doesn't work. Now he's appealing to his heart, right? To his pride. It's like, wow, he's really lifting me up. He's recognizing me as the one that gets the food. And, of course, neither one of those work. So the disciples, all right. There we go, 27. And after the sop, so after that little event there, Satan entered into him, and then said Yeshua unto him, "That thou doest, do quickly." Man, there's a lot that's going on there. Look at verse 2. Just keep your finger here and back up to verse 2. Supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. So at this point in verse 2, Satan, the adversary, grabs a hold of Judas's spirit, if you will, right? And he's convincing him to betray Yeshua. And so now he's got the idea to do it. Now, after the bread's gone, it says Satan enters into him. He is literally possessed by Satan himself at this point. Judas is. The big cheese in the demon world, if you will, at that point. And so Yeshua obviously perceives this, and he says, hey, what you're going to do, get it done quickly. Get it over with. So look at the reaction. And he said that out loud. People heard it. Now, no man at the table knew for what intent he spake this unto them. Remember, they weren't privy to the conversation where he said, he who I give the sop, he's the one that's going to betray me. That was just John heard that, and John may have told, Simon. But so they didn't know what he spoke to them. Some of them thought because Judas had the bag, that's the money bag, that Yeshua had said unto him, buy those things that we have need of against the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. So they're thinking, oh, he's sending him on an errand because tomorrow's Passover, and he's got to get those things, those last minute things, like Sister Kate runs down the harps and gets stuff. Go do that, hurry and do it. Or they're thinking, hey, he's got the money bag, he's thinking go give it to the poor people. Perfectly reasonable. They're not suspecting Judas of being the bad guy. Verse 30. He, then having received the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. Why do you think they have "and it was night"? I mean, weren't we kind of all assuming that it was nighttime anyway? I mean, it's supper, right? Here's the thing. Judas moves, because he leaves immediately, right? And it was night. He leaves the upper chamber, the room, where everyone's reclined. They're all together with the Master, with Yeshua. They're breaking bread together. It's a very special time. They're not in the dark, right? There's lamps lit and stuff. So it's lit. They're in the light of Yeshua, if you will. And then he leaves and it's night. He goes from light to darkness. And in fact, the rest of the time, Judas is in darkness, right? I mean, they come get him at night at Gethsemane, and we'll get to that later. So I thought that was interesting that he moves from light to dark. 31. Therefore, when he was gone out, all right, so now the bad guy's out of the room. Yeshua knows the bad guy's out of the room. John knows the bad guy's out of the room. It's like, it's only good guys here, if you will. When he was gone out, Yeshua said, now is the Son of Man glorified, and Elohim, God, is glorified in him. If God be glorified in him, God shall also glorify him in himself, and shall straightway glorify him. Glory, 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 Elohim is glorified, Elohim is glorified, Elohim is glorified. What they don't get that he's saying is Elohim's going to be glorified because I'm about to be killed for all men's sins and rise again, all for the glory of the Father. And Yeshua realizes the final pieces are now in motion and things are going. Judas just left to go betray him. He's going to get it done quickly, and God, therefore, is going to be glorified quickly. Little children, he's talking to his people. Yet a little while I am with you. You shall seek me. And as I said unto the Jews, whither I go, you cannot come. So now I say unto you, a new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Remember when I said that the disciples of a master, that tribe, if you will, they take on the words of the master, they take on the dress of the master, they take on the mannerisms of the master. You can say, yes, they are from that school, or they are from that master, or they are from that tribe. And he's saying, this is a new commandment. There's a lot of confusion in Christianity about this. This is a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you. And then he says it again, that you love one another. And then this is how everyone's going to know that you're my disciples. This is how everyone's going to know that you're in the tribe of Yeshua. Those are my words. If you love one another. Love, love, love. Love one another, love one another, love one another. Look at 13:15. Just go back to 15. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done unto you. What had he done to them? He washed their feet. All right, servant leadership. It was demonstrating his love for his disciples that he washed their feet. That's a deep kind of love and respect for them. And now he's saying, love one another as I have loved you. And so he says it's a new commandment. Is this a brand new idea? Here in the year, 30 AD, something like that? Never before seen in Torah? It's just brand new concept. Wow, this is a new commandment, that we love one another. How fascinating is that? He must be the Messiah if he's given us a new commandment. Turn to Leviticus 19, please. We're coming back here briefly, but Leviticus 19. Verse 18. This is Old Testament, right? This is Torah, right? Leviticus. Now he says, this is a new commandment I'm giving you, that you love one another. Love one another, love one another. New commandment. Leviticus 19:18. Thou shalt not. We know it's going to be a command, right? If it's thou shalt or thou shalt not, that's a command. You shall not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Well, that sounds like Yah said that before. It doesn't sound new. Look ahead to verse 33 in Leviticus 19. And if a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, you shall not vex him. But the stranger that dwells with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and you shall love him as thyself. For ye were strangers in the land of Egypt, Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. You don't have to turn there, but Deuteronomy 10:18. Love ye therefore the stranger, for you were strangers once in the land of Egypt. So we're told to love one another. We're told to love the stranger. And I submit to you, and we'll probably talk about this at a different time, maybe not during a sermon. I'm thinking one of the things for Shofar Mountain, why I said one of the things that separates us from other people is we're generally out of her, my people. We're out in the boonies, and we're all kind of into preparedness. Do you think that maybe there will be strangers that will be sojourning with us at some point that we're supposed to love and not, as we read in Psalm 41, turn over to the enemy? not break bread with them and lift our heel up against them. It's something to think about. Love your neighbor as yourself. Don't vex the people who are sojourning amongst you. Sojourning amongst you means they're not us. In this case, we have two families here who today are sojourning amongst us. So today you're guaranteed not to be vexed because we just covered it. It's fresh. No one will vex you today. but you know what I mean? It's like, hey, there's a deeper meaning to this. This is clearly not a new command in the sense of commandments of Yah. Well, wait a minute. Yeshua said, I give you this new command. How are you saying it's not a new command? Well, I've just showed you it's not a new command. This is the first time Yeshua, Jesus, is hitting this point with his disciples. You all need to love each other as you love yourself. Now, he talked about the Good Samaritan and he talked about that, but he's hammering this home and he's like, look, y'all got to understand something. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. Anybody who receives you is receiving me. Y'all can't be fighting amongst yourselves. You have to love one another. And when he says love one another, by this people will know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. Who's he talking about them loving? One another. Fletch, you're going to love Roger. Roger, you're going to love Shannon, and so on and so on and so on. He's talking about that. He's talking about this inner core, because the first thing the enemy's going to want to do when the shepherd is smitten or stricken, the sheep are scattered, right? Well, why don't the sheep band together and say, come on, we can do this. We know what he wants us to do. Every morning he leads us down to that water. Let's go. And then in the night he takes us back here. Let's go. No, they're all going to go their own way. They're all going to do their own thing. And they're going to fuss and fight. We talked about that either the last week or the week before. They're all looking, where do they fit in the hierarchy? Who's going to be where? Who's going to be where? Who's going to be... Shh, love each other, man. Don't worry about that. This is part of the ancient paths. This is part of the ancient way where a tribe feels love for one another. It's the tribe against everybody else. If Fletch does, and this is worldly, but it's still true for tribal, because tribal was also worldly. If Fletch does something wrong to those people out there, they can't come deal with Fletch. He's our Fletch. We'll take care of Fletch. You go against Fletch, you go against the whole tribe, because we love Fletch. Now, together we may be, look, you can't be doing that because you're going to get us in a war with that tribe if you keep this up. All right, so cut it out. But we have to love one another. We have to be tight. And it's something to think about, because I think that's something we, as Shofar Mountain, can work on. I think we can work on how we interrelate. The Father brought us all here from somewhere else. He brought us all here for a reason. And we need to recognize that. And we need to recognize that when I've got a problem with Brother Sam, I need to take it to Brother Sam and deal with it and get it done with. But I don't need to be going to Fletch and saying, did you hear about Sam? He cut all his hair off. Can you believe that? or whatever. We got to love one another. And we have to think about the big picture of things. And in the end, it's us against everybody. In the end, it's Yah's people against the world, or more importantly, the world against Yah's people. You're either with Yah or you're not in the end. And so we've got to love each other. We have had this truth from the beginning. We're going to close with some verses from 2 John, all the way to the back of the book. I would say chapter 1, but I think there's only one chapter in 2 John. There is. 2 John. We're going down to around 4 or 5, but we'll just start with 1. The elder unto the elect lady and her children, whom I love in the truth, and not I only, but also all they that have known the truth. Boy, there's so much here, and I'm going to go to 1 John, 2 John, 3 John after we finish John. So we'll get into the depth of that later. It doesn't mean exactly what you think it does. For the truth's sake which dwells in us and shall be with us forever. Grace be unto you, mercy and peace from Elohim the Father and from from the Master Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, the Son of the Father, in truth and love. All right, that's the greeting. Here's why we're here. I rejoiced greatly that I found of thy children walking in the truth. as we have received a commandment from the Father. And now I beseech thee, lady, not as though I wrote a new commandment unto thee, but that which we have from the beginning, from the ancient times, from the old times, that we love one another. And this is love. All right, we got to love one another. So now he defines what love is. And this is love, that we walk after his commandments. This is the commandment, that as ye have heard from the beginning, you should walk in it. The ancient paths, the ancient ways, walking on the path that's been cast up, that means built for you to walk on. That's that we keep his commandments. Yeshua said, if you love me, what? Keep my commandments. That's the number one thing right there, is that we have to keep his commandments. We have to love one another, and the way that we love one another, besides just being decent to each other, is to help each other keep the commandments. And that's a help, not a stick. Most people don't respond well to the stick. Most people respond well to the help. I fall on the stick side. That's why I'm married to Sister Kate, because she's all the way on the other side. So, Yah had a plan. We are meant to be tribal. We are meant, clearly, to love one another. The thing about betrayal is betrayal comes from within. Betrayal comes from within the tribe. And that's what makes it hurt so much, when people have sat down and broken bread together and somebody betrays them. But that's where it has to come from. And that's been happening from the beginning of time also. It happened to Yeshua. We'll probably see something like that in our future. And we just have to realize that we have the love of Yeshua. He loves us. We're commanded to love one another. And that's easy to do in the good times. It's hard to do in the bad times, when people just want to start pointing fingers. Let's pray.